Neil deGrasse Tyson is the Carl Sagan of our age. I don't just mean he presents the new version of Cosmos TV series. I mean something deeper than that. Neil understands the poetry of reality and can articulate it with a poet's voice. Of course, he fits right into ScienceNOW because he has no truck with supernatural nonsense. But there's no negativity in him. His love affair with science and evidential truth is all positive. And like Carl Sagan, he's a master of the English language. He's also a man of huge personal warmth, a big man in every way, big-hearted, intellectually at home with the very biggest and grandest of scientific subjects. You also feel he's a personal friend the moment you meet him. Over many years, I've been professionally interviewed by a very large number of journalists, scientists, and others. Neil has interviewed me, I think, 3 times for his StarTalk show, and I can honestly say that I've never enjoyed being interviewed so much. The conversations were punctuated by his jovial laughter at every turn. In every case, I was sorry when the time came to end the conversation, and I was astonished to discover how much time had passed. I think the first time I encountered him was when we were both on a panel at a conference in, I think, San Diego. I'd been rather negative about a previous lecturer who was soft on religion and other soft, slippery subjects. Now, Neil is not at all soft on religion, but he considered that my negative tone had been counterproductive, and he said so, quote, "You're a professor of the public understanding of science, not professor of delivering truth to the public. And these are 2 different exercises. One of them is you put the truth out there, and like you said, they either buy your book or they don't. Well, that's not being an educator, that's just putting it out there. Being an educator is not only getting the truth right, but there's got to be an act of persuasion. Persuasion isn't always, here's the facts, you're either an idiot or you're not. It's, here are the facts, and here's a sensitivity to your state of mind. And I worry that your methods and how articulately barbed you can be end up simply being ineffective." But what I chiefly remember from that encounter was Neil's great bellow of good-natured, boisterous laughter after my reply, which was, "I gratefully accept the rebuke." At that San Diego conference, there wasn't time to have a proper discussion, but perhaps it might come up in our on-stage conversation after this award ceremony. Certainly, I have to take such a rebuke very seriously from such a maestro of communication. I'm also acutely mindful of the fact that he was captain of his school wrestling team. He was also editor-in-chief of the school's physical science journal. But wait, what kind of a high school is it that has its own physical science journal? The answer is the kind of school that numbers 8 Nobel Prize winners among its alumni, the highest number of any school in the world. I think Neil mentioned that in his speech yesterday. The Bronx High School of Science. He went on to Harvard, where in addition to being lettered in wrestling, not sure what lettered means, and he was lettered in wrestling, he won a gold medal for dancing. After majoring in physics, he switched to Columbia to do his PhD in astrophysics. In addition, it's no surprise to learn that he has 9 honorary doctorates. He'll soon catch up with the Nobel Prize-winning biologist Sir Peter Medawar, who collected honorary doctorates through the alphabet. And he announced that Yale and Zimbabwe are unaccountably dragging their feet. I've never attended any of Neil's talks at the Hayden Planetarium, but I could easily imagine that any child attending one of these lectures will want to be Neil deGrasse Tyson when he grows up. He sometimes tells the story of how Carl Sagan himself took the trouble to inspire the boy Neil. I have no doubt that the man Neil is passing on the compliment to the next generation of children. What child of intelligence and curiosity would not be inspired by such a role model? His book, Letters from an Astrophysicist, shows his qualities as a patient educator to perfection. It's 101 letters from members of the public, many of them young, and Neil's replies. Every one of the 101 recipients must have been thrilled that he took such pains to write personally to them. I haven't asked him, but I suspect that it may be the memory of Carl Sagan that moves him to such patience with his young correspondents. He even devoted more than a whole page to a patient and remarkably polite, by my standards, reply to some little fellow whose smugly confident reason for not believing in evolution was that it contradicts the Bible. And he responded with the utmost kindness, yet firmness, to a heartfelt and really rather moving cri de coeur from another man who wrote, "Is there any chance at all that the earth is only 5,000 or 6,000 years old? I would just say that if there is no God, I will feel awfully alone and insignificant." Neil's reply to this De Profundis cry is kindness itself, spread over more than a page yet again, ending with, "Good luck in your explorations." His other books include Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which I haven't read on paper, but I have listened to, the audio book. It's a very excellent fact, by the way, that he takes the trouble to narrate his audio books himself rather than hand it off to an actor. Turns out he's a brilliant reader. And I fancy myself as a bit of a connoisseur of audiobooks. He really makes the meaning come alive, and not all readers do that. And with subject matter as tough as modern physics, that's quite a feat. His latest book, Starry Messenger, has the subtitle Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization, and I'm delighted that that's being presented to everyone here. It's a topic ideally suited to his graceful wit, coupled with robust, no-nonsense intelligence. The title is a translation from the Latin of Galileo's Sidereus Nuncius. Today is the 20th time I've been called upon to present this award. I suppose Neil would say there's nothing special about multiples of 10, other than the arbitrary accident that we have 10 digits. If we had a power of 2, such as 8 or 16, we'd be trained in octal or hexadecimal arithmetic, and the digital computer might have been invented much earlier. But for me, the 20th occasion is special for a better reason. The 20th recipient, in addition to being exceptionally clever and an exceptionally brilliant communicator, is just such an extremely nice man and such good company. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Very, very fragile, don't drop it. It's written on that side what it is.
Yeah, I got it.
And on this side there's a quotation from Newton.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sit down. May I respond briefly?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. To be called poetically articulate by someone who was my highest measure of just that, I can think of no higher compliment. And I'm deeply honored to have been considered for this award. I'm more honored that your name is on the award, because we all follow your writings. We follow your wit on your comebacks there on YouTube, the interviews you've been on, the trenches you have dragged through to try to bring reason and a modicum of science literacy to where it's needed most. And so I don't know what higher honor I can imagine receiving than this. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And one last point there. I don't know how recent your source information was, but I have more than 9 honorary doctorates.
Oh, great.
Okay, wait. I have 21 honorary doctorates.
That's nearly 26.
Nearly 26, and one of them is actually from Yale.
Great.
So the Z, we got to check up on the Z's in a bit. I was once told, in fact, this was by the then head of NASA. I was in town to actually get an honorary doctorate. In that day, it was from Howard University, and I thought I'd swing by NASA and say hi. And he said, "You're probably thinking there's nothing special about an honorary doctorate." I said, "Yeah, kind of, right? You just kind of show up, they hand it to you, and then you leave." And he said, "No. Your original PhD is actually simply the promise that you'll do something great. And the honorary doctorate is the evidence that you have." And I said, wow. So, and thank you all. So, Richard.
Okay, well, we've got a lot to talk about. We've had many conversations in your office, as I said, and it's my turn to interview you now. I thought I'd concentrate on Starry Messenger, having just read it twice, once in print and once narrated by you. I thought I'd begin by Rationalia, the virtual country of which you and I are among the inaugural citizens, defined as, you tell us about Rationalia.
Okay, so we were both at a conference. Where was this? In the Canary Islands, was it?
Yes, it was Starmus in Canary.
Starmus in Canary. We were both at a conference, and one member of the conference, it's a science art celebration, and someone at the conference wondered whether you could create a virtual country called Rational Land, where you opt in if you agree with the constitution of Rational Land. I heard Rational Land, it didn't sit well in my ear, so I said, how about Rationalia? All right, and so that caught on, and so it was all the buzz, right? So what would the Constitution be? The Constitution would have one amendment, and it would be, thou shalt not pass a law without sufficient evidence to support its goals. That's it. Are you into the evidence behind laws? Then you have it. And you would opt in. And they talked about, would there be sort of states that would agree? And I said, no, because states have quite the mixture of people, many of whom in some states don't want to think rationally about it. So it really should be open either to cities or to individuals. Why not? And I tweeted this. I was so happy that this was an idea. Whether or not it ever became real, it was just a force that might operate on how people think about governance. And I tweeted it, Rationalia, one-line constitution.
All policy shall be based on the weight of evidence.
On the weight of evidence, period. Well, I'm wondering, should I have left that tweet for the forbidden Twitter file after I saw the results? Major publications had full-page rebuttals to that tweet, saying a country or world run by rational thinking or by scientists is a terrible idea. And more than one outlet used the word terrible. And I thought to myself, what's going on? How can, what? How, why? What? And so I had to respond. And I responded with the features of what of the virtual country Rationalia would have. Okay? What would those features be? Because they're thinking everyone would turn into Spock from Star Trek. And I said, no. No. In fact, irrational thinking or non-logical thinking may be one of the greatest drivers of great art. You don't go to art and say, is that logical? My favorite painting is Van Gogh's Starry Night. Take another look at that painting. That is not what that man saw that night, okay? But I assure you that is not what was in the sky. But I look at it and I say, this is not what he saw, but it's surely what he felt. And I value what artists bring to this world. It's a perspective that pure rational thinking won't necessarily give you, and most often doesn't. And so if I'm gonna pass a law and say, let's fund artists because it enriches our outlooks on this world, do a few experiments and you'll see, yes, that's true. So out comes funding for artists. The people were so scared that maybe their science teacher, where they got a bad grade or something, I don't know, but the prospect of rational thinking people in charge spooked them. And so I reproduced all of those line by line properties of what such a world would be like. And no rebuttals came my way, because I thought I did a good job saying this would actually be a pretty cool country. Yeah.
So let's all join rationale. The book begins with this wonderful quote from the astronaut Edgar Mitchell that you gave us the other night, and I'll just repeat it. You develop this is the perspective you get from being in space looking back on Earth, which is a kind of theme of the whole book, actually. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world and a compulsion to do something about it. From out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. You want to grab a politician by the scruff of the neck and drag him 250,000 miles out and say, look at that, you son of a bitch. You read that last night today.
That is the book. I mean, I didn't have to write anything to follow that, because that is the book.
And now in Britain, there's a very deplorable television series called The Crown. Maybe shown here, I'm not sure. Well, okay, apparently it is.
We don't know enough about royalty to judge it as deplorable.
You don't learn it from that, anyway. And in particular, a bit that I took major exception to, having met certainly Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and I'm sure you have. They were portrayed in this series as meeting Prince Philip, and Prince Philip is portrayed as being curious to know what they felt when they got to the moon. And they came across, the actors portrayed them as being inarticulate idiots. Now that, having been to Starmus and met those gentlemen, I haven't met Michael Collins, unfortunately, but is that not a travesty?
Yeah, so I think when you're writing anything for entertainment, even if it's sort of documentary, that's docudrama, I guess, right, The Crown, because we don't have records of every conversation had, but it just has to hit certain historical points, and they make up all the dialogue in between. And I think they kind of need to stereotype people to enhance the contrast in the drama, otherwise it's less dramatic. So I can't hold that against them, in the sense that at the end of the day, they're trying to entertain you. They want to get you to watch.
But they could have let the actors speak lines similar to Edgar Mitchell's. I mean, they could have had similar to yours. I mean, because...
Yeah, but then the astronauts would be like the poets, and then you wouldn't be able to distinguish them in the series. I mean, all I'm saying is I pick my battles, and I can't chase TV shows in that way.
Okay. Well, now let me pick a very slight battle.
What is your blood pressure level?
Okay, now I'm going to test yours now.
Okay, fine.
This is the one place where I'm going to push back. Okay.
Okay.
Right. On page 48.
Third paragraph, second sentence, fifth word. Yes, okay. By the way, I wrote this book with the idea that nothing was pushbackable upon, so that I would just present information for you to absorb and have it fold into your opinions or not, but that it was a perspective you might not have had. So I'm delighted to learn that I might have written something there that is either wrong or I missed something that I could have enhanced.
Neither of those, neither of those.
But you're going to push back anyway. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Apollo 8, Bill Anders.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know. Okay.
Okay, let me finish.
Okay, I know he's going. All right, okay. Go.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void.
Wait. Apollo 8 went to the moon first. They didn't walk on the moon, but they left. They were the first human beings to leave Earth, which among rocket aficionados is more significant than walking on the moon. They did it in December 1968, the bloodiest year of the bloodiest decade in the 20th century domestically for the United States. Okay, with a civil rights movement, 2 assassinations, campus unrest, a hot war in Vietnam, where we had maximum casualties that year, and we had astronauts orbiting the moon. And they were orbiting the moon during Christmas. And unknown to everybody, they click on their comms back to Earth, and they do this.
Yeah, they read from the book of Genesis, first beginning, very beginning. Now you go on. I was only 10 years old, but sorry, I should have said. Madeleine Murray O'Hare sued the US government for this religious broadcast to a huge audience from space. And Neil, you went on. I was only 10 years old, but had the me of today met the Madeleine of then, here's how that conversation would have gone down.
Madeleine Murray O'Hare, the head of the atheists.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
American atheists.
That's right.
Yeah.
After suing... Everybody here knows that, I think.
Oh, sorry. I forget who I'm in front of here.
Yeah, okay.
My apologies.
Okay.
And she was adamant at the time.
Yeah, okay, so Neil, were you strapped to a Saturn V rocket with 9 million pounds of thrust and sent 250,000 miles away into deep space to witness Earth rise from lunar orbit on Christmas Eve? Madeleine, no. Neil, then shut the fuck up. Well, now, Neil, I would not have gone along with Madeleine on that. I certainly would not. For one thing, I wouldn't dream of suing anyone. But don't you think a scientist might object on the grounds that to read from Genesis to this vast worldwide audience was sending the wrong message? I mean, had it been... In a way, your point is these guys have earned the right to say what they like because they're up there and they performed like that. But it was NASA that told them to do it. I mean, it wasn't their idea. They didn't want to do it.
If that's true, I didn't know that.
Well, okay.
They might have tried to get permission, and then they get permission.
I do know, because at the same Starmus meeting, I think, it may be different, I've been to several of them, I hung out with Bill Anders a lot, and we got on very well together. And he told me...
Who was on that crew?
Yeah. He was the one who first read from the Bible on this occasion. The others did too.
The first 10 verses of Genesis.
That's right. Bill Anders told me that he doesn't believe in God, and he did not wish to do that, but he was made to do it by NASA. Well, I mean, you didn't know that, but even so, I think, well, for one thing, I think shut the fuck up's a bit far. But I think more to the point, it's as a scientist, you should object to especially that verse of Genesis. I mean, couldn't they have come up with something poetic for the astronauts to read, or maybe let them write their own?
Yeah, so you make an important and excellent point, but what I have learned in my old age is there are people who have had unique experiences in life, whatever they may be. And if they're experiences I have not had, then I didn't walk those miles in their shoes. And so I do not feel justified offering critique on how they reacted to the stimulus that they experienced. And I'll just give them space to express themselves. If you're worried that that will all of a sudden make everyone religious, then we're not doing our job here on Earth, right? You have to just give people the space to be themselves, whatever that is. And you're worried that the platform was huge. Maybe that's...
Yes, and it wasn't just religious, it wasn't just that, it was this particular creation myth, which in America especially is believed by nearly half the population.
Right, right. Well, there's another side of this, which is interesting, and I don't know if it fits into this conversation. On the liberal left, there seems to be a greater tolerance for sort of creation stories that might not be Christian, right? If there's
yes.
Yeah, if there's a sort of Navajo origins story, people say, yeah, let's hear it. Oh, great, that's great.
Yes.
What a nice cultural exchange there. And so, to me, it's all culture. And some of them have bigger hammers than others. But I think it's our duty to say this is how they feel, fine. But if you want to actually decode the operations of nature, Genesis doesn't work, and neither does any place else in anybody else's holy book.
Have you been following the New Zealand controversy, by the way? Okay, it's very interesting. New Zealand government Jerry Coyne has been following this on his website. New Zealand government is saying that...
They all know Jerry Coyne, the biologist, atheist, good. A hero of the movement.
Absolutely. The New Zealand government has mandated science teaching in New Zealand has got to give, not equal time, but substantial amount of time to Maori myths in science. And
that's consistent with what I was saying.
Exactly consistent
with what
you're saying.
They would never agree to the Bible in that context.
No, this is coming from the left.
Yeah.
And it's imposing the local tribal myths. And I think one way to answer that is to say, if there's any good science in Maori myths, and maybe there just is, then it should be worldwide. It shouldn't just be taught in New Zealand. There shouldn't just be Navajo myths taught here. Science is global. Science is worldwide. Science here is exactly the same as science in Japan. And that's the message that is not being conveyed by this left-wing New Zealand government.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't just create a course of origin stories. It could be a very rich story, and you go around the world.
Exactly.
There are other ways that could have been handled for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch to a different subject. Well, no, this is almost different. Page 65 is a very nice bit.
It's a nice page. I'm glad you like page 65.
Yes. That's a good page. Imagine you're on a space mission at a moon outpost collaborating with a fellow astronaut on scientific experiments. Now your country's back on Earth. I think, say, America and Russia, imagine. Your country's back on Earth, go to war. What do? Do you wrestle your fellow space collaborator to the ground, consumed by the emotions, anger, and actions of Earth politicians 2,038,000 miles away? Or do you peaceably go on about your moon day performing experiments, even if dismayed and ashamed that you are both members of a species that for thousands of years has made an art and science of killing one another on Earth? I mean that's a beautiful passage.
Well, thank you. All of these bits and pieces in the book is the sum of sort of wisdom and insight that I've gleaned over my life. I could not have written this book 10 years ago. I wasn't wise enough, and I was still accumulating insights that I reached full-term pregnancy when I wrote the book. The book had to just come out of me at that point. And so this was one of those stories, and I just wanted people to think about that.
Yes, it's full of stories like that, and they're very stimulating and revealing they make you think, and that's exactly what you... I adored the bit at the end where you talked about lawyers.
Lawyers? Any lawyers here, by the way?
Of course, there must be lots
Oh,
of them.
okay.
They're very nice lawyers.
All right, in the back row,
Yeah.
that's good, okay. Oh, but they're nice lawyers, I like that.
Last
Oh,
night,
I got to tell one lawyer joke that a lawyer told to me. Okay, he said, the problem is, it's the 97% of the lawyers that give the other 3% a bad name. That was told to me by a lawyer.
That's a nice.
Okay.
Last night you told us one of 3 stories of how you were struck off the list of jurors. Could you like to give us one of the other 2?
Oh, sure, yeah. So
Or even both of them?
the most recent one, I can't give all 3, because then they won't want to read the book. So the one I gave was the middle of 3 stories. The third one was, again, I got kind of deep in there, all right? And then they read the particulars of the case. And the particulars of the case were, there's a woman who accuses a man of robbing her of her groceries and personal effects as she came out of a grocery store and turned the corner. And part of the problems was they were not able to recover on this man or anywhere where he had been any of her personal effects or any of the groceries that she was carrying. And so that was the defense attorney was citing this as important thing. All right, so there it was. And so the judge says, would you be able to convict based on the testimony of one person or another that you hear in this? And they go to somebody and say, yeah, I probably can, I can. They got to me and I said, everything I know about eyewitness testimony tells me that if that's the only evidence you have available, I will not convict. If there's no other material evidence in this case, I will not convict. Okay. So then, the judge says, does anyone else of the jury agree with juror 7, what I forgot what my number was, that you need more than one eyewitness to convict? Okay. And I said, all right, what do I do now? The person in front of me said, that's not what he said. Okay? All right? And so I so resisted the urge to say, you didn't report what I said accurately 15 seconds after I said it. That would count as failure of eyewitness testimony, wouldn't it? And I said it 10 billion nanoseconds ago, right? So I was out in the street 30 minutes later. I'm astonished. There's a whole chapter in there it's called Law and Order. And why they will never want a person such as myself with the expertise that I have on a jury is beyond me if they're really after the truth. And the truth can only be decided by an analysis of information, of data, So I was sad when I wrote that. I tried to land in a positive place, and I think I did. But working through it, I remember saying, yes, trial by jury of your peers is better than trial by jury that's not your peers. And trial by jury of not your peers is better than trial by no peers. And then trial by no peers is better than trial by just a possibly biased judge. And trial by just possibly biased judge is better than trial by ordeal, by dunking you in the water. And if you die facing up, you're innocent, and die facing down, all right? So each one of these is a progression. I don't want to take that away from the system. But a trial by data analysis experts, if the truth is what you're after, has got to be better than all the rest. It has to be. Especially in modern times where they are trying to bring forth scientific evidence. But then somebody brings their scientist and somebody brings another competing scientist. And what does that mean? And how do you sift through that? There's a way to sift through it. If this person is fringy and they're not really in the mainstream, and you're going to say, but they have this degree. It's the first thing they read. There's a PhD and the blah, 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 blah. There are idiot PhDs out there, okay? And you got to be able to figure that out as well. So that whole chapter was very painful to write, because that's the system that, yes, it's better than anything that came before, but it's not as good as we can obtain.
I love that chapter. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
I've often wondered about trial by jury. I've been on 3 juries, and my impression was that we were swayed by one eloquent member of the jury. It's supposed to be 12 independent people, but of course they're not independent. They're talking to each other, and so that's violating a principle of experimental design right there. And another thing about the idea of beyond reasonable doubt. If it really was beyond reasonable doubt, then you wouldn't have to wait till the jury come back. It would be obvious. I mean, there should be no tension. Courtroom drama, you made another point, courtroom drama would have no dramatic value, because if anybody who sat through do you see what I'm saying? Anybody who sat through the case would know whether they're guilty or whether it was beyond reasonable doubt. If it's beyond reasonable doubt, you shouldn't need to wait hours and hours for the jury.
Or even days.
Or even days.
And plus, I thought they should introduce a third category. Okay, so one of them is innocent, which means they have evidence to show you didn't commit the crime. And then, of course, guilty would mean you have evidence that you committed the crime. But there should be a third category, and that's what they should call not guilty, which is, we know you did it. We just can't prove it. That should be in there somewhere.
Yeah. By the way, have you been told you got it wrong about the Scottish?
Oh, did I get that? No, I thought the Scottish system had that element in it.
It has that, but it's not quite right. The Scottish system is guilty, not guilty, and not proven.
Well, isn't that kind of what I said?
Yeah, but you said...
Oh, not proven. I said not guilty. Right, I should have said not proven.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just suggest that for the paperback edition. When it comes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. This guy read every word of the
yeah, what was I going to say about that? Oh, yes. What if you had 2 juries? How many people would bet that the 2 juries would give the same verdict? And that if they wouldn't, then the whole system collapses.
Correct.
Yeah.
It means you're really not after, or you use different lawyers. They're not, why should one lawyer ever be paid more than another? Oh, because they're better able to convince a jury of what the lawyer wants them to believe. And that's what good lawyers do, and that's why they're high paid. And at no time is anyone talking about finding the truth. I'm sad. And like I said last night, they got lady justices there, and she's blindfolded. And I thought, don't you want to see what's going on? Isn't this...
I think that means she's blindfolded to prejudice, something like that. She's impartial. I think that's probably what that means.
Okay.
Symbolic.
Okay, if I were Lady Justice, I would remove them.
Yes.
And I'd stare at your soul to know if you were guilty.
I love the bit where you're talking about debating clubs, university debating things, where you're actually not told which side you're going to advocate for until the last minute, which, as you say, is terrible training for the art of bamboozling rather than actually getting at the truth.
Right.
And I remember.
And if most of Congress have legal backgrounds, then they're professional arguers. And now we layer politics on top of their training in being a professional arguer, and nothing gets solved in Congress.
Yeah, quite. I mean, if only we had more scientists in government.
Or engineers, just people who have some connectivity to the operations of nature. Yeah.
One of my biological colleagues, I can't quite remember who, said that we are naturally selected by evolution not to be born scientists, but to be born lawyers. And it's a serious and rather forbidding point. We are we're a social species, and we have, like many other social species, dominance hierarchies. Besting your rivals is one of the most important things you can do as a wild animal or as a wild human. And so natural selection favors the ability to be a good arguer, a good persuader, a good bamboozler, rather than somebody who's good at finding the truth. And you make this point very well. Now, here's a quote from page 10. Differences in opinion enrich the diversity of a nation and ought to be cherished and respected in any free society, provided everyone remains free to disagree with one another, and most importantly, everyone remains open to rational arguments that could change your mind. Sadly, the conduct of many in social media has devolved to the opposite of this. Their recipe: find an opinion that you disagree with and unleash waves of anger and outrage because your views do not agree with theirs. That resonates with me all right.
So just an hour ago, I sent out a tweet, and I've learned that I have to soften the edges of the tweet, otherwise people think you're attacking them. So this one, I said, I wonder, see, rather than it is, I just said, I wonder if the discomfort one experiences in hell would not be from the heat, but from the humidity. I just put it out there, just see. I mean, heat index is is temperature plus humidity. And if it's supposed to be this terrible place, you want to add some humidity to it. And so I'm just seeing, so Richard, wait, hear me out. So when I do that, I'm actually probing the spontaneous neurosynaptic response function of who's out there. Did they laugh? Did they cry? Were they get angry? And that's useful information for me when I craft the next tweet. And so these are my pathways into how people are thinking. And what may be when you tweet, you just tweet what's true.
No, I don't. No, I don't do that. I do exactly what you do. I say, I say discuss. That's what I say. And you cannot say discuss because they assume that you're taking a stand.
Right. So I never take a stand because that means you're asserting an opinion,
exactly.
And people have to then fight you.
Exactly.
But one of yours was, and Richard, you had to, Richard.
Okay, I can take it.
One of them was, I'm going to get the details wrong, but the sense of it is correct. Every common ancestor between two species, both two species can mate with that common ancestor. So in principle, you could take this back and find out who can mate with the apes or something. You said, discuss. No, Richard, you can't just float that and expect people to just say, oh, this is an interesting academic argument.
Why not? Why not?
Let's have babies with our ape ancestors. This is... Okay, wait, pause. Could you roll the videotape, please? Ladies and gentlemen, this, which was recited verbatim by Richard, but I want you to see it unfold.
Oh, you've got a tape. You cheated. Okay.
I want you to see it unfold in real time.
Okay, I'd like to see this.
Okay, and by the way, this is 2008. Pause.
Oh, look, this is it.
That's what I'm saying, okay? So, you have to know in advance, this is the first time I've ever met this man or exchanged any words with him. He is my hero, my scientific hero, my hero of articulation, and I am fumbling over my words because I'm nervous, and I'm nervous in his presence. I don't know if he knew that, because I'm usually way more articulate than this.
That's not possible.
I also want to add that, remember last night I said that my gray hair is in patches, and okay. In this, you can see my 2 patches of gray hair, and it's like starting to look mangy. And so, but now you don't see it so now you're not distracted by it. But I hadn't done that yet in 2006. Anyway, here it is. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Check it out. Can I have one last comment on Richard Dawkins? It'll be quick. I was in the back row as you spoke, and so I could see sort of the whole room as the words came out of your mouth, as beautifully as they always do, and as articulately as they always do. And let me just say, your commentary had a sharpness of teeth that I had not even projected for you. It was my first time meeting him, and so I felt you more than I heard you, and I asked the question, and it gets back a little to what Francisco was getting at. You're a professor of the public understanding of science, not professor of delivering truth to the public. And these are 2 different exercises. One of them is you put the truth out there, and like you said, they either buy your book or they don't. Well, that's not being an educator. That's just putting it out there. Being an educator is not only getting the truth right, but there's got to be an act of persuasion in there as well. Persuasion isn't always, here's the facts, you're either an idiot or you're not. It's here are the facts, and here is a sensitivity to your state of mind, and it's the facts plus the sensitivity, when convolved together, creates impact. And I worry that your methods and how articulately barbed you can be ends up simply being ineffective when you have much more power of influence than what is currently reflected in your output.
I gratefully accept the rebuke. Just one anecdote to show that I'm not the worst in this thing. A former and highly successful editor of New Scientist magazine, who actually built up New Scientist to great new heights, was asked, "What is your philosophy at New Scientist?" And he said, "Our philosophy at New Scientist is this: science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can fuck off."
That was a conference, it's called Beyond Belief, from 2006. And a lot of experts coming together in psychology, neuroscience. First time I met Sam Harris was there, and biology. I might have been the lone astrophysicist, but we all were comparing ideas on this.
Yeah. Yes, well, that's I remember vividly.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I say discuss, and that's because I've had a lifetime as an Oxford tutor, but that's what we do. We get students to discuss things, and I'm afraid my mistake is to think that the Twitter audience is a lot of Oxford students, and they don't like to discuss. If you say, is X true or Y true, discuss, they assume that you're advocating one or other of them, right. Usually the one that they don't like.
Right, and on that subject, again, probing the Twitterverse, I've had several tweets that didn't assert one or another. It didn't assert one side of you or another. They were completely neutral. And I was fascinated by how, what followed. So after one of the horrific school shootings, I tweeted, at Walmart, the nation's largest gun seller, you can buy an assault rifle, but company policy bans their sale of pop songs with curse words. That was the entire tweet, okay? So, what happened was, the people, assuming I'm advocating one thing or another, took sides. Some were saying, the Second Amendment means that there's a American thing with the guns, and how dare you attack the Second Amendment? And other people said it's free speech. And so the free speechers who were arguing against me, and the gun folks who were arguing against me, each thinking I was taking the other side. After that tweet, I learned that raw information is never received in its raw state. It gets filtered through what they think you are trying to say, combined with what their own attitude is about this world, and that's how they then react to your tweet, or to any social media you may post. That was so illuminating for me, that once again, it influenced how I compose subsequent communications with the public, and what I say and how I say it in public talks that I give. These are probes of people's minds in the instant. It's instantaneous. It's their knee-jerk reaction to words you put. And if you're going to say, let's mate with the common ancestor of apes, the knee-jerk reaction to that is not rational.
It's not quite what I said, actually.
Okay!
Never mind, the point is, the point remains. The most depressing thing that Stephen Pinker, I was talking to him in London the other day, and he said the most depressing finding in psychology is this. They did an experiment was done in which people were given a set of alleged facts, they were made up facts, which seemed to either support gun control or not. Has one mic? I know. What's happened? He divided an experiment between Republicans and Democrats, and so they predictably went the way they should have done. Then the same experiment was done, just the headings changed, just the nature of the statement was changed. It was changed from gun control to something else, which the I got it wrong. That's right. The scientifically literate people in either party were being tested for whether they could see through the errors in the reasoning. And the point was that they were biased by whether they were Republicans or Democrats. And then when the headings were changed such that the alleged findings were different, then it was the Democrats who got it wrong. So the point is that the conclusion is that what people believe depends upon their political allegiances or religious allegiances, their tribal allegiances, not upon the evidence. And I've told the story very, very badly because I only read it last week, not last night. But it's worth looking up. It's in what time did we finish, by the way, George? Well, wait a minute. What does it say on the program? Okay, fine. Okay. I told that story in a very bad way, but the message is very clear that a very large majority of people that are influenced by the tribe to which they belong, the political tribe, the religious tribe, the cultural tribe, rather than by the evidence. It's deeply depressing.
Yeah, it's actually this is harder for me, and as a kid, that's your backup. Yeah. Okay. So a big part of the book addresses bias, and of course, people in this room have written books on how to address bias and given public talks and this sort of thing. So bias is nothing new to this audience in the way we need to confront it. What I try to do is give enough examples of bias that are stories of real things that have happened, so that you have, rather than just say you're biased in this way and that's wrong, you can get there through other pathways, where while you're on the pathway, before you make the accusation, the person is actually taking step by step with you. And then when you land in a new place, they say, wow, I never saw that. And so again, these are the acts of persuasion.
It's an art that we must cultivate.
Yes.
Neil, you're the hero of this conference. You charmed us, amused us, educated us. What I have to add is, I hope you come back.
Oh, well, thank you. So I want to add to that. when Richard said, I'm going to have a rebuttal when we got to the Madeline Murray O'Hare bit, there's one other clip that's only 90 seconds, is Richard, I give a whole thing, and then Richard comes in as only Richard can. So if we go to the beginning of that clip and show this. This is yet another conference a few years later, and I already know him, and so I'm sitting next to him. And we're talking about picking your battles when arguing with religious people with regards to laws and legislation, especially school. My comment was, if the guy's saying that Noah had dinosaurs on his ark, and that evolution of the Big Bang are just theories, then the problem is not the separation of church and state. It's the separation of scientifically illiterate, ignorant people from the ranks of teachers. That was my 5-line letter to the editor. But I did so not mentioning in those 5 lines, you're going to go to heaven or hell or Jesus, because I don't care about that, really. But it is demonstrably false that people hung out with dinosaurs. And if Noah is a person, he did not have dinosaurs on his ark. Okay? So I only cited those things for which here's the evidence. Okay? But if you want to say, if Jesus is your savior, you'll go to heaven, okay, then talk about separation of church and state. Otherwise, get the demonstrably false stuff out of the classroom. So that's where I draw the line, and I find it to be much more effective, because otherwise you get entangled in all the rest of the baggage that comes with the religion, when in fact, there's a cleaner, if you separate the variables, there's a cleaner track to take. Now, I admire those who want to take up the whole package, but I can't count myself among them. Life is too short.
Richard Dawkins.
I never know what I think. I sort of feel I agree with what Neil has said on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
That was it. Richard, thank you. Thank you.